Welcome back to the PM Research Metal Lathe Kit. And in the last video of this, we did the parts for the tailstock, and I really wanted to then do the tailstock so I could have a working tailstock. However, there are features to this that have to match up with this. And I just think it would probably be better to do this first and then make this fit this. I think that would be easier than the other way around. So I'm going to do the part that I have been procrastinating on the most because it's the biggest casting and it's most likely for me to screw up, and there's a lot of stuff that has to be done to it. But it's got to get done eventually, so I might as well do it now. Just taking a look at this, trying to decide where to start. Well, the obvious thing I need to do first is go at this with some files and remove a lot of the seam lines in the casting. There's a lot right in around here I need to remove with files, and back here. And the rest of it looks pretty good. I basically just have a variety of different sizes and shapes of files, and I've got plenty more. It's not really rocket science, basically just choosing the file that fits where you want to go and remove all of the burrs and stuff. So let me do that off camera, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like here in a little bit. So that's what this is looking like so far. There's quite a bit of mismatch between the left and right hand side. So I had to take quite a bit off of one side here and one side here, plus a lot of boogers sticking out I had to file off. And on the ends here, now that'll probably get decked off a little bit, so I didn't worry about that too much. The top and bottom surfaces are going to get machined down, so I didn't worry about those. And I pretty much did all of that with these two files right here. These were able to get in and get what I needed here. And I absolutely did not take the easy way out and resort to a Dremel tool at any point in time. And then after I got all that filed down, I just went over it with some 120 grit sandpaper. Basically just cut a strip, wrapped it around, and just kind of pulled back and forth. That got the top surfaces here, and then just went back and just kind of hand sanded around in here. The next thing I want to do before I start machining is I want that to look like the casted areas, like the rest around it. So I'm going to hit it with a bead blaster or sandblaster, just where I filed, to try to get it back to that casted look. Unfortunately, I don't have like a nice sandblasting cabinet. I have one of those Harbor Freight handheld portable sandblasting guns, and I'm using like a black oxide stuff. I think that's what it is. It's black, whatever it is. And it just goes everywhere. I'm sure my hair is full of it. But anyways, I think that did the trick. Got rid of the sanding and file marks. Those look more like casted sections, I think, especially from the top down. Looks more like casted webs inside of there. But anyway, so that's what that looks like so far. I'm pleased with it so far. Let's take a look at these measurements. When you take a look at the drawing, it says 6 inches end to end. Well, let's see what we have. Now, there is some curvature. So if we go from the shortest end to that end, we're actually just under 6 inches. It's like, what the heck? They couldn't have given us a little bit more material to work with. Now, if we go full end to end, getting the curve in, we're at just a little over 6. So I don't really think that length matters that much. I mean, as long as everything here fits and everything here fits, I mean, we should be fine. I'm really wanting to kind of just clean that off a little bit. But if I take it to the corner, it's going to be less than the 6. which again, I don't think is that big of a deal, but I'm really not too sure, to be honest with you. Anyways, if we start over here looking at those dimensions, they want a 1/4 inch from the bottom. And again, that's pretty much there. A little bit over. I know I can take some off. And that one, a little bit more. Right there is a little bit high. And right there, that's pretty much close to that, same as that. On the top, I need 0.188. Now here, there's plenty. I've got plenty of material there. So I want to deck that bottom off flat, but that corner, pretty much one. A little bit over. Pretty much one. So I think this edge is a little bit skinnier than this edge. So if I put this on the mill to deck that off flat, I need to even up these surfaces first because I'll put parallels under here. So what I need to do, I think, is take off just a little bit here, take a little bit off of here until it's the same as that. So I'm just going to use files very gently here until I can get those two the same. I'll come back to you once I think I'm ready to put this in the mill. Okay, so I took that down with a file. As best as I can tell, these top rails here are the same-ish. And I'm pretty sure I can trust those to put on a parallel in the vise to deck that off flat. And now notice here it says 1/2 inch, and I've got plenty to take off there. So that'll come off of that bottom surface here because this will already be at 1/4. So I'm going to take this down to 1/4. I can't take that. Yeah, I just realized this. I think I was about to screw up. I can't take that down to 0.18. I can't take that down to 0.188 first because that inside has to be 1/2 inch. So I'm going to have to take off 30 thousandths from that bottom surface here before I can take this down to the 0.188. So yeah, first thing I need to do is that, then that, then that. So anyways, let me put this in the mill and get that flat, and we'll just go from there. You know, it's projects like this that really make you realize how quickly you can screw something up if you're not paying attention, which I almost really easily could have screwed something up. I've got this into parallels. I've got it tapped down tight on the parallels. But as I was getting ready to clamp it down, I realized that there's nothing supporting between those sides, and I could have crushed it. So as you can see, sticking out right here and a little bit over here is some scrap aluminum shims that I stacked up and put between those sections. Now here, those webs are closer to it. So I could squeeze here and those webs would protect it. But on that bottom edge, those webs, you know, they only go down about to there. So I very easily could have crushed that. And when I tightened it up, I noticed that my shims got a lot tighter. They were a slide fit. Now I can't slide them. So that definitely kept me from potentially cracking or breaking this piece here. So anyways, I've got a brand new 1/4 inch end mill here. I probably should use something bigger, but I don't want to get too aggressive with it, I think. And I'm just going to go until I kind of just deck everything off flat. But let's just see what happens. Okay, so I just zeroed the Z right there, and that is all flat. There's just a little bit of Sharpie right there on that edge, but I can't even feel, yeah, I think that's good there. So I'm going to measure for the 1/4 inch and see if I need to take any more off. I think those are all pretty close enough to 2.5 for me. I'm going to live with that. Like I said, the important part is that is flat, and once I flip that over and do the other side, then both sides, top and bottom, will be flat and parallel. And any discrepancies is just going to be within the casting itself. So I'm good with that. There's the shims I put in, and now they come out nicely. So yeah, I almost just squeezed those together, which could have damaged this whole thing. So definitely put some shims in there before you clamp down on that. Let me clean it up and deburr it a bit, then we'll take a look at the measurements. I just went over the edges with some sandpaper. There really wasn't much of a burr. But now we can see how the legs will go on, and I'm just realizing I probably could have done the holes for the legs, but probably would have been smart to do that at that point. But I can always do that later. No big deal to put that back in there and put the holes in for the legs. So if we take a look at this one, we're looking for 6.35. That's pretty close. Again, it depends on where you get it on the casting, but that's between 3.5 and 4 on that side. So anyways, I'm happy with that. Next up is we will flip that over, and I'm just going to deck off the top just so it's flat, and just so we have a flat surface to work with there. Now this is bridging all 3 of those webs inside, so that's going to give me plenty of support when I squeeze down on it. But I still don't want to overdo it. That's a lower point. I think that's where they poured in for the casting. They cut that off. But we're just going to go until that's all gone. I've got plenty of material to work with, but I don't want to get overconfident and take too much. So I'm going to be careful and try to take only to get it flat. There's still a little bit of Sharpie mark right there, but I don't want to go any more because I don't want to screw up my other dimension here. I want to keep plenty here. So let's actually see how we're looking. So I've got 9.66 on that end, 9.66 on that end. So this thing is, to be honest with you, it's a lot more parallel than I expected it to be. I'm not complaining. I'm just kind of surprised is all. So in the middle needs to be 1/2 inch. That needs to be 0.5. So I need to take off 0.017 or something like that. Yeah, it kind of changes depending on where I go here. But what I take off there, subtracted from what's here, still gives me plenty to get the 0.188 on that surface. So far I'm good. Don't double check my math. I might have, for some reason, I keep getting my decimal points screwed up. But that's okay, that's fine. I'll triple check it before I actually take a cut. But so far, I think it's looking okay. So the next step is I want to get the 1/2 inch from that edge to that edge. So I put a new, a smaller end mill in there, and I'm just going to touch off on the black Sharpie. And I did some measurements, and as best as I can tell, I need to take off 0.58 millimeter from that surface, and that's it. Also, there is a little bit of a raised edge right there, and as best as I can tell, that needs to come off. So I put some Sharpie marks here as a witness, so I'm going to take that surface down even with that surface, maybe just a tiny bit above it. I don't know. We'll just play it by ear how it goes. But the most important part is that surface right there, and that'll give me the 1/2 inch across here. Okay, here's what that looks like. And it started getting a little bit deeper here, deeper than I wanted. I can catch that with a finger now. I'm going to have to sand that to blend it in. And then I'll probably mask that off and hit it with the sandblaster again. The rest of it is good. Let me measure that width. And again, we're looking for 1/2 inch. It's just a tiny bit over, but I can live with that. Well, right there. Yeah, that's just a tiny bit under. I just flipped this back to millimeters. That end, I've got 5.38. That end, I've got 5.2. 19, 5.2, 5.38, 0.4. So 0.2 of a millimeter difference. And I'm honestly not sure why. That's kind of weird. I just double checked here compared to here, and they're fine. For some reason, that cut started going up. And like I said, I have no idea why it would have done that. Unless it just wasn't this way in the vise correctly. That's kind of weird. I don't think it's enough to notice. Now I did do this backside. This is the back of the lathe. This is the front of the lathe. I did do the backside first because it won't be seen. But yeah, that's kind of bizarre. I don't know. I don't understand why it started cutting more here than here. I don't know. Unless my vise isn't perfectly trimmed. Let me recheck the vise. Maybe that vise isn't square. But, I don't know. I mean, it's pretty much 1/2 inch. It's close enough anyways. I'll do the other side off camera since it's just going to be the exact what you just saw. I won't make you watch all of that again. So let me get the other side done off camera, and I'll come back to you, show you what we have at that point. There's the other side done, and the flat side came out better. It didn't sink off on the other end. So I think maybe that casting was a little bit high there, maybe. So I think the straight was... So I think the cut was straight. I think the casting was just a little thicker here, maybe. Because on this side, it's pretty much perfect all the way down what I want. Now I did get the exact same type of a taper. From that end to that end is like 0.2 of a millimeter, which isn't good. The only thing I can think of is that my vise is somehow not square or trimmed properly. So before I do any more work on this, I'm going to check out the vise, make sure that it's as square and true as it can be. For what this is, I don't think that's going to matter at all. 0.2 of a millimeter, I really don't think is going to hurt. But before I do the features on the top of the bed, I definitely want to make sure this is correct. So I'm going to spend some time on this, and then we'll get back to this. And what I want to do is get the outer width correct, the center width correct, and then we could put the little V-guide features on here. So give me a minute and I'll be right back with you. Yeah, that was the problem. I know you can't really see that, but I put a parallel in, which is as long as the lathe bed. And when I cranked it from one end to the other, by the time I got to the other end, it was 0.006 off, which is real close to the 0.2 millimeters that I was measuring off. And right now, again, I think you can see the needle not really moving. It's still on 0. So yeah, that was the problem. So I've got that fixed. I've got that sorted. I tightened my nuts. They were a tiny bit loose. I mean, they were tight, but I got another half a turn out of them. So that should be good. Now, hopefully, I can get back to working on that bed. So let me get this mounted, put that away, and we'll get back on the next step. So I've got the piece back in and on some parallels, and I've got a 1/4-inch end mill, 2-flute 1/4-inch end mill, and I used my electric center finder or edge finder. So I found an edge here, found an edge here, and that startled me, and found both of those edges, and then used the half function on the DRO. So right here, I am now centered. So let's take a look at what I'm going to do with that. So I want to get the center width at 1/2 inch and the outside edges set to the 1.250. So again, I found center, and I know this is easy math, but just to make sure I don't screw it up, I made some notes. So I've got my 1/4-inch end mill on center. So if I want 1/2 inch, then that's 0.25 here, 0.25 here. But if I just move that over 0.25, well, the center of the end mill would be there, and I would be taking too much off. So I have to subtract half of that. So I'm going to go plus and minus 0.125, which is 1/2 of a 1/4 inch. One reason why I chose a 1/4 inch end mill, it just makes the math easier. Plus it was just there. Converting that to millimeters, 3.17. So from that point, I go plus and minus 3.17, and that should take that to the 1/2 inch. Now to go to here, I need 0.625, and I do apologize, I'm going back and forth between inches and metric, because these dimensions are coming from here, which is inches, but my DRO is metric, so, excuse me for going back and forth. But that's 1/2 of what I need, and again, if I just go from center and I move over that amount, well, the center of the end mill would be there. So again, I would be cutting off too much. So now I need to add half of that radius. So from going here to here, I subtract 1/2 of that. Going over here, I add 1/2 of that. So plus or minus 0.75 inches or 19 millimeters. And then that should get me the inside and the outside dimensions correct. So let me put the camera at the mill, and then we'll go ahead and make those cuts. 1.4975. Depending on how you hold it, you can get 5 right on the money. And then across here, 1.255, 1.255. I'm going to skim off just a tiny bit, just to try to get a little bit closer. I'm not going to go too crazy with it. .249. 1.25. Yeah, that was definitely better. That's definitely a whole lot closer. That's good. I'll take that. Next thing I want to do is the height here. All right, I'm going to take that off. I'm going to take off about, I only need like 0.5 millimeter. So we'll get that off, and then we'll figure out how to put the 45s in it. So the next thing I'm going to do is that undercut here. They give the dimension of 0.75, and of course it's going to be the same height as the 0.188 right there. So let's go take a look at the mill and see how I've got that set up. So we've got the T-slot cutter here, and it is at the correct height for the 1.88. And I found center again and shifted it that way about 3 millimeters, and then I'll shift it that way 3 millimeters from center, and that should give me the correct width inside there. So let me put the camera in the mount, and then we'll make those cuts. Okay, so a climb cut is not the way to go there. I'm going to shift it that way and do a conventional cut on that side, then loop around and go that way. And that should work better. It was grabbing and jumping a bit, so let me do the other way. So I cut the camera off because right about here it was really starting to chatter. I noticed it was shaking the camera a little bit. So what I did was I took it out, and the teeth of the cutter were just all caked in aluminum. So I kind of chiseled that out, and basically I had to keep some lubricating oil on it to finish the cuts. And with this, it cut perfectly fine. But with this all over it, you couldn't see what was going on. So I didn't record that. But both of those undercuts are done. It doesn't look very good under here. And I don't know if that's because the casting wasn't centered. I did everything I could to make sure that these were centered with the casting. But it looks like it took more out right under here. I'll have to show you once I get this out or get the camera moved or something. But I think a few minutes with the file will clean it up and it'll look perfectly fine. Definitely did not scrap the part or anything. It just doesn't look as nice as the other side. But like I said, a few minutes with the file and that should be perfectly good to go. The next thing I need to do is the little channel that goes along here to prepare for the 90 degree for the V's that go on top of there. So let me replace that and start cutting in the channels on top of there. Okay, so next up, I'm going to mill that in, and I've got my measurements and again my math for going from 0 to here, and I also double checked from that edge to that edge and finding 0, and it was right there. So I need to go down 2.4 millimeters, and then once that's in, then the next step is to take the 90-degree end mill and then put those points in like that. So let me get that channel milled and see how that goes. That was only half the depth. You know, I like this stuff, but I hate it because it's really sticky, just makes a mess. I'm only using it because it's a 4-flute end mill. If it was a 2-flute, it'd probably be fine, but I don't have a 2-flute the right size, so yeah, let me make another pass. Well, I'll clean all that up, then I'll make another pass, and then that one should be done. Okay, so there's those 2 slots done. I kind of screwed up a little bit, stupid rookie mistake. When you're making a slot, you're supposed to use an undersized end mill and then move it that way and then that way to make the slot the right width. I used an end mill that was the nominal size, and even though it was centered, they're not perfect. Now I'm hoping that once I take the 90-degree end mill, this one, I'm thinking if I put that in correctly, as long as I still do the math right for this to make the chamfers, then I don't think it's going to mess me up that bad. I think I might still be okay. But that was just a dumb, stupid rookie mistake that I knew better, but you know, I've gotten away with it before, and this time it kind of bit me. It's not terrible. It's just not as perfect as I was hoping for. So let me put this in and figure out the math as far as how to make those features. Okay, I have never made a feature like this, so I'm only hoping this is right. Basically, I found the edge, and I found the point of this right on the corner, and according to the drawings, it's supposed to go down 0.055, which is 1.4 millimeters. So that point on that corner should go down 1.4 millimeters. And that's really the only dimension they give you. I mean, they give you the 45 degree, but they basically just give you the dimension from how far down from that corner. So I've already lowered it to the 1.4 millimeters, so I'm going to feed it through and see how it goes. It'll either work or it won't. So theoretically then, if I move that way, 1/8, which is 3.18 millimeters, and go back, then it should get the other side of that piece. All right, I just moved it 1/8 that way again, and that should get the face of the next one over. I think I'm very happy with that. It's going to need a little sanding and filing and whatever, but I think those are good, despite my earlier mess up, because I based those off of what should have been there and not necessarily what was. So the only thing that's going to be a little bit off is the very bottom of those channels between here, but the actual V's should be perfectly fine. So all I got to do is move that over half an inch, and that should set me right up on that edge here. I'll double check it by finding the edge and center and all that stuff like I did here. But I'm going to do this other side off camera because it's going to be the same as what you saw here. So I'll get back to you once this is done. And then I think at that point I could pull it out of the vise and take a look at it and see how it looks. Okay, so here's this off of the mill. I still need to do some sanding and filing. There are some burrs like right there I need to file off, but I wanted to show it to you before I did any of that. So let's talk about what went right and what could have gone a lot better. First off, I think the most crucial parts are the ways. I guess you call them the ways. I was concerned about those because I had never machined a feature like that before. I've never used an end mill like that. So, you know, I'm used to like straight and side, but once you get to an angle like that, I was a little bit concerned about how to do that. But when you look at the, when you look at this, the dimensions they give you, I mean, the 45 degrees, that's easy. That's just the cutter. But basically, what I did was I cut that square first, and then looking at this, it looks like the point, if you just imagine that cutter setting here like that, if you put that point right there, and then just bring it down 0.055, then that would give you that cut. And then you just move it over 0.125, do that one, then move it over 0.125, and you just keep, I mean, the math is easy. And it worked out pretty well. So the one thing I was concerned about the most actually ended up being the easiest part of it. Also, as best as I can tell, the dimensions top and bottom here, top surface to bottom surface, are very true and parallel, as best as I can tell, like I said. The thing that really bugs me that I screwed up was the end mill that I ran through here to make that first slot. Like I said before, I knew better. I knew I should have used a smaller end mill and then walked it out. But that did not really affect the chamfers. It only affects that little bottom portion, which shouldn't affect anything. The chamfer should be good. So the headstock should fit fine. Everything should fit fine, I hope. The thing that screwed me up the most, I think, was when I first made those cuts here, my vise wasn't true. And that screwed up some dimensions, which made it difficult measuring, but I think I'm good. Like I said, it's only a few thou out. I don't think you can really even see it. One of my biggest gripes, I guess, and I don't know if it's my fault or the casting. I'm sure it's my fault. But you can see here how that took out a lot more here than it did over here. So either the casted feature was that way too far, or I machined these that way too far. I did my best to keep everything true and straight. Now that dimension is good. When you measure, that dimension. It's right where it should be. And so it's fine, but I don't like that step. So I'm going to go in there with some files, and I'm just going to blend that curve right there to match that. Also, when I cut under, I was having a hard time seeing that surface, and I didn't want to cut into that surface. So I'm just going to file that down. I'll probably just use a little round rat tail file here and here just to smooth that out a little bit, because I don't like that step. So I will file that out and true that up. The other side is the same story, same thing. So again, I'll continue that curve here and then blend those out. So I don't know why it did that. It was probably my fault. I probably should have shifted that way a little bit, but I mean, I barely dusted that surface. There really wasn't a lot of meat here to play with. So I took off as little as I could to try to keep those centered. So I think I'm just going to blame the casting. I really don't know. For those of you who have already built this, and if you had that same issue, let me know. And, you know, maybe it'd make me feel better if I knew it was the casting's fault and not mine. Now, I still need to deck that surface off. There's going to be some screw holes here and here. And actually, there's going to be a lot of screw holes. So again, here, so 4 holes there, 4 holes here, and on the bottom for the legs and the headstock. So there's about 12 holes that need to be drilled and tapped, and this one, but it says to do that at assembly. We'll see how that goes. So I wanted to do the harder part first, because drilling and tapping the holes should not be that big a deal. I probably should have decked those off while I had it in the mill, but it's not that big a deal, I don't think. Shouldn't be that big of a deal anyways. So I think this video is way too long. This will be kind of part 1 of the bed. And the next video will be drilling and tapping the holes. And maybe I'll even screw the legs on it so we can have something that can kind of stand up and start looking like a lathe. So anyways, that'll be it for now. As always, until next time, thanks for watching.